Average Joe's Drive-In is proudly sponsored by the Maine Cannababes. The Cannababes are a charity group of pro-cannabis women in the state of Maine who are bringing worthy attention to various causes throughout the medical cannabis community. This year, they launched their very first Maine Cannababes pinup calendar. All the proceeds from this calendar are going to worthy charitable causes. If you are interested in purchasing one or finding out more about the Cannababes, you can go to their website, www.maincannababes.com, or find them on most major forms of social media like Facebook and Instagram. Please go and check out this group of wonderful people doing great things and helping out in the community. Once again, that's maincannababes.com.
Welcome to Average Joe's Drive-In,
Your weekly podcast on movies, music, games,
and other things entertainment related.
now your host.
DJ Washburn.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Average Joe's Drive-In. I am your host, TJ Washburn, and with me this week is my guest, Shaw Smith. What is going on, man?
Not much. Happy to be here.
Thank you for coming in, and Shaw hit me up. He's been listening to the show, and him and I go back a ways. We attended many a show together back in the day at the Cave, and so we get to know each other a little bit through that, and become buddies. So I decided I wanted to have him on the show and talk about some stuff. And so why don't you tell everybody a little bit about yourself, because I'm sure most of the listeners don't know you.
Yeah, I mean, I guess if you spent time at the Cave or anything, you probably met me in one way, shape, or form. Worked the door for a while, and, I went to a lot of shows, kind of grew up around there. Knew Kathy I was like a 10-year-old kid, or maybe even younger when I knew Kathy. But now I live in the area, grew up in Orland. For a job, I'm a nurse at Eastern Maine. Been doing that for like 3 years, but another passion of mine is the outdoors, so I've been doing a lot of like backpacking stuff over the past like 10-15 years, and recently got offered a small position at a local survival school. So
Oh, very cool. Yeah, that's one thing I wanted to talk to you a little bit about is I know you're very into like the survival stuff, which I'm absolutely like a ridiculous fan of Les Stroud and those guys, and I love the outdoor shows, so it's kind of cool to kind of see you doing that stuff and keeping up when you're on Facebook and stuff like that, and what you're up to and what little adventures you're going off on. And so tell everybody a little bit about how you got into doing that stuff.
Well, kind of like you. Like, I always admired these people that have survived things, or very like the pioneer days of using your own skills to keep you alive. I've always been into that. I love history, so looking into like frontier America and the art of bushcraft and like firecraft, hunting, fishing, self-reliance, and then this kind of, when you're a backpacker, some of those skills like come in handy. I mean, we buy a lot of gear. I'm definitely guilty. Like, excuses to buy crap.
Gear whore. Yeah, that happens with anything you do, though, whether you're a musician or whatever. You always like when people are really into something, they usually tend to be like gear whores towards whatever that passion is. So it's like, well, you people that are into cars usually have expensive stuff on their car. Little trinkets they deck their car out. Like me, I don't care. As long as my car gets me from point A to point B.
I miss those days. Now I'm spoiled, and I'm buying all this stuff that like 5-6 years ago I would have made fun of somebody. Like, I just got a smartphone last year, and now I'm one of those people, like, sitting there oblivious to the world around me.
Join us.
Yeah.
Join us. Yeah.
Like, hold on, real people. I gotta talk to this person that I don't know.
Which is something that's kind of weird. I almost feel like now, for those of us who grew up in the age of without the technology, like the cell phones and stuff, it's almost coming full circle again, where I find myself putting my phone down more and more now. And just being like, I just want to do something that has nothing to do with my phone. Like, I find myself, I'm still online a lot because it's a necessity to keep in touch with all my friends and all that stuff, but I have found myself, especially over the last year or so, really kind of drifting away from, a lot of the stuff I do, like the podcast and my writing. It requires me to be online and keep in touch with people and stuff like that. While I don't dislike being online, as far as like the social media stuff goes, I find myself on that stuff a lot less than I used to be.
Yeah, good.
But I see that with a few other people I know too. I can almost see them going back to I'm going back to before all this shit was super popular, because shit was way simpler. There was less hassle, drama. I don't need to know what's going on every second of the day type stuff. So, which that kind of falls into the outdoor stuff and doing like the survival stuff and going up in the hiking and the backpacking, because you're getting away from the humdrum of everyday life. You're getting out, going back to nature, as you so often
to the primitive. Quoted Soulfly.
Great song, by the way.
I love that.
Great song, by the way. Excellent live band too. So.
I've never had the privilege.
I've seen them live twice. So.
And Sepultura?
I've never saw Sepultura live, which would have been awesome. I could really care less about seeing them now, to be honest, because Andreas is like the only one left from the original band. Igor and Max are doing the Cavalier Conspiracy.
Yeah,
it's pretty much. It's like, it's like half the dudes from Soulfly with Igor and Max. So it's, you got Mark Rizzo and those guys. And
they're such a cool band. When I knew Soulfly going up because, they had a few popular songs when I was a kid. And then when I got a little older, I looked into them. Like, I didn't even know they're from Brazil or any of this stuff.
Oh, yeah.
And looking into, like, their history. And, like, Brazil's a gnarly place.
And that's one thing I love about Soulfly, is the fact that they incorporate so much of, like, the native instruments into the stuff. In which Sepultura was doing a lot at the end with, like, Roots and stuff like that with their last album that they put out with Max. And, that was kind of like, you can kind of tell listening to Roots and Soulfly, like, that was the direction I think they would have been going in anyway.
Definitely.
So, but yeah, so intense to see those dudes live, and like 15 dudes get up on stage and doing all getting all the congos and stuff going with them, and just the whole, dude, it's just
energy.
So much energy. Like, definitely, as far as energy goes, they're one of probably maybe in the top 5.
These guys are here. Slipknot.
I've never seen Slipknot live. I'm a fan of the band, but I was saying, as far as like bands I have seen live, I would put them up there with Pantera, Sam Blatchurch, and Hatebreed is probably one of the most the most energetic live bands that
was my first cave show.
Hatebreed. I never saw Hatebreed. I saw them at Ozfest in 2007. Lamb of God I would put up there too. Was just absolutely ridiculous on stage. But I still say to this day that Sam Blatchurch is probably hands down the most energetic band I ever saw.
No kidding.
Oh, they just put on one of the most insane live shows ever.
Wow.
You can't.
Wouldn't think so.
And this is no disrespect to them for their albums, but their albums do them absolutely no justice whatsoever.
That's why I'm thinking, like,
they're one of those bands you really have to see them live to appreciate them.
Yep.
Because I like their albums. Their albums are, they're decent albums. They're good. I love a lot of Sam Blatchurch. I've, been a huge fan for years. That was the first live show I ever went to. Was Tree and Sam Blatchurch at the Penny Post in Old Town, and but you have to see that band live in order to really, really appreciate just the insanity that they're. And it's mainly like the band itself is really energetic, but their singer is just the dude. I watched him in, I think it was 99 or 2000 at Bumstock at UMO, climb the rack of speakers and dive off into the crowd. I mean, dude was like 20 feet up in the air and just dove into the crowd.
He pulled an Iggy Pop.
He does that shit all the time, though. I mean, that's just the stuff the guy did live. And
it was not broken.
he probably has been. I don't know, but and they just kind of made a comeback a few years ago. They've started doing a few live shows and shit again. It's like, and I haven't been able to go, but it's like, I need to go see that insanity at least once more, hopefully, before they.
Yeah, because like last summer, Corey Taylor had to tour the whole summer in a neck brace. I think he fell off the stage, broke a vertebrae. It was funny seeing him play in Mass with his big neck brace.
Well, I mean, even if you look at not a metal band, but Dave Grohl from the Foo Fighters played like a whole tour with a broken leg, basically. So
tour injuries.
Tour injuries. I threw my back out once, and it was really cold, and that sucked. That was.
I had to eat ramen noodles for a month.
Ramen noodles, yes, many times, and canned beans and raw hot dogs, but and not necessarily. I didn't say warm beans either. I said canned beans.
Oh, cold can of beans.
And Vienna sausages and cold ravioli. Hey, I never did much, extensive touring. Like the biggest things I did were like 2 or 3 day little mini type things, but. Yeah, 3-4 days out, sitting in the baking sun in the van with shag carpeting, and it's 100 degrees out, and you're sitting there, and it smells like ass because there's 5 dudes who haven't showered in 4 days.
Yeah.
Eating cold beans and ramen, and
isn't it great being in a band?
Oh, it's fun, and then you get to the venue and you finally can't stand the funk anymore, and you go in and you do the washcloth bath in the bathroom and shut the door and hog the sink up, and you're just like, I gotta get some of the scum and sweat off me. And
so this is a segue to survival skills.
Exact perfect segue. So we had this all planned.
This was a naturally occurring segue. Things to stock up on, and I posted this on my Facebook, like things that you should always have in your little kit. Baby wipes is a big one. Baby wipes. Fresh water, and
Gold Bond medicated powder.
Gold Bond, especially if you're like, a little bigger guy like myself, you get a little, everybody needs a little powder.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That was we always kept a bottle of that underneath the seat in the van.
Swamp acid is terrible.
It's bad, yeah.
Nobody likes that. But yeah, so I got, with the survival stuff, so I always preach to like everybody that you need to keep a kit. Don't think of it being like this huge like Walking Dead apocalyptic event happening. Like what just happened in the state of Maine? People lost power for some people still have no power.
Oh, I had friends that worked without power for 6 or 7 days.
Yeah, that
before
sucks.
They got it back on. Yeah.
And
most of them were very unprepared.
Exactly, and you don't want to go running off to Walmart when it's happening. So keep some jugs. A little tip that I didn't know until recently. So your hot water heater, if it's really bad, you can drink that water. That's all potable water in there. So you've got like 50 gallons of water.
If you had to. Luckily, I am on town water, so I didn't have to worry. I don't have to worry about water, but somebody that has a well or something,
Yep, their pump's gone.
Oh, yeah. In a dire situation where you would have to do that is good to know. But and I don't feel like I am a survival expert by any means. I feel like I could survive out in the woods if I had to, because I have a lot of background and knowledge and that sort of thing. But whether I've actually put any of that to the test is another story or not. But I mean, I know what to do. It's a matter of executing. But one of the things that people just knowing basic things like saying, hey, okay, I have all electric appliances. I have a grill. I have a grill, so I'm good. I can boil water on my grill. I can cook stuff on the grill. You talk to some people, that doesn't even click in their head that they can do stuff like that.
Keep it simple, stupid.
It's
no, you hit it on the head. It's utilizing, back to gear. I think the big thing now is the the commercialism of survival is very big now.
Well,
there's all these gadgets and gizmos and shit that you don't really need.
And you see, I think it was
was Les Stroud that would bring out this stuff that people were putting out and actually try it out in the field, and it's like, this is shit. It broke the first time I tried to use it.
Yes.
It's like, I love Les. I think Les is probably, like, nothing against any of the
Other guys that I've watched on the survival shows, but I think
Les is probably like the most like straight up and genuine dude of the bunch.
that go out and do stuff because he does it all
Yeah.
himself.
And Dave Canterbury.
Yeah,
Dave's
and
another
the
great one.
Self-Reliance
Yeah, yeah.
School. Little plug for Dave. I'm sure he's listening.
I'm sure
everybody
Yeah,
out
yeah.
there. Yeah.
But he's cool because he's big on the bushcraft element, where you take in case people don't know what bushcraft is, it's basically going out into the wilds with minimal hand tools and essentially carving your own existence and being self-reliant. It's a cool thing. And some people still practice it, especially here in Maine. I think some people practice bushcraft and don't know they were doing
Don't
it.
even realize they're doing it. We grow up. The thing is, like, and people, some people will laugh, especially people that aren't from around here. But you grow up around. A lot of us grow up around,
Oh,
it,
yeah.
especially those of us that are from the smaller towns and not the city folk, as we like to call them. Yes,
sir.
We grow up out
In the woods, fishing and hunting and gardening and doing all that stuff. So
like we know that stuff, so it's not even a second thought to us.
a lot of times, it's like,
What would we do if
if something happened? It's like,
I'm pretty sure I can handle myself.
Right.
I'm not I can use a bow if I need to. I'm not great with it, but I can make myself good real quick because I know the fundamentals. I know,
Exactly. And yeah, exactly.
There's just little things that you learn over
over the years and different things, and
some people you talk to and it's just a
foreign concept.
but the grocery store's
Clothes. What am I supposed to do?
Yeah, exactly.
You can't. Can you eat this now? My biggest issue would be is I don't know the edible plants and I don't know stuff like
Yeah.
that. So that would be what would really screw
And
me up.
edibles only are good here for, not a very long part of the year. Wintertime stuff, you have to dig in the snow, and then that creates, you have to have knowledge of where those plants were before the snow came.
The area that they're
They're gonna grow and the elevations and
Like
what
your
grows what.
tubers and like a little one that you can always eat. I don't know about the wintertime or how you get to it, but like Queen Anne's lace, it's a wild carrot.
I think I've seen them before.
I have actually.
Yeah, they're like a white flower.
Yeah.
And they're flowery. However, don't mistake it for a giant hogweed, because that will kill you.
See, that's one of those things that it's like.
It's like the people that hunt for mushrooms, and it's like,
I don't dare.
I'm like, I don't even dare. I was like, I don't care if the book tells me who it is. There's so many that are so similar looking to each other. It's just like, no, I'm
No.
good. That would have to be, I would have to be pretty freaking desperate before I would get to that point.
And I hate mushrooms, so there we go.
Well, if it was a choice, the thing is, I don't think there's really, they're calorie wise and stuff. They're
No.
pretty much water.
They don't have much. They have some nutrients and some medicinal properties, some of them, but
Yeah.
Especially
You might
the-
forget where you are for a few hours, and you'd be going off and picking wild edibles that weren't there, and
you ever remember seeing that old movie, The Bear? And it was like with a bear cub,
oh yeah.
and he eats the
He
one,
eats them.
and he has like a trip. I remember that vividly when I was a kid, and just being like, "What is going on?"
I don't understand this. This is very confusing. He just ate a mushroom.
Yeah.
Mommy, will that happen when I eat canned mushroom?
Maybe that's why I don't like mushrooms.
That scared
I'm
you.
afraid I'm gonna
scared you.
trip balls for a week and not be able to function.
So yeah, but I mean that's the thing. Like, so I would suppose it would be helpful for
somebody like me that doesn't know that, maybe to at least carry a wild edible book with you in your pack.
And I do. They have these laminated fold-out brochures, and they slip anywhere. You can put them in whatever pack you got. But yeah, definitely. I think even if you're experienced, you should carry a guide, because especially if you're in a real survival situation, your brain's not always working that great, especially if it's like 20 below.
and you're sitting there thinking, okay, can I eat this or not? Well, I think so. I'm really hungry, so I'm gonna try to eat this.
Yeah.
And the next thing you know, you've got friggin', you've got explosive diarrhea, and which isn't a good
Yeah.
situation in any situation, but even worse when you're probably already slightly dehydrated and you're freaking out and you're.
There is a system when you're in doubt, and I'll try to go through this quickly, not to bore everybody. But you take whatever it is, and you start by rubbing it on the inside of your wrist.
Yeah.
And if you get any like tingling or stinging, like don't eat it. And then they say move up to like the inner part of your arm, and then once you're sure it doesn't burn your skin, then you touch it to your tongue, then you bite a little bit.
Right.
So they're like, just take your time if you're unsure.
Yeah.
And generally anything that's bitter or stings or anything like that, they say be careful.
Yeah.
Like don't eat it if you're not sure.
I would probably end up surviving
On a mostly meat diet.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that would be,
I just don't know enough about the other stuff that I would probably turn into one of those.
situations where I would live. But I know enough about the things that I would have to eat in order to get everything, because, as gross as it may sound, there's a lot of stuff you've got to eat because there's this thing called rabbit starvation.
Yes.
So, for those of you who don't know what rabbit starvation is, you can't survive on just straight
Meat alone.
Nope.
You have to have fat, which means you have to eat the
Fat from whatever animal,
which that includes things like
the eyeballs, the brains, the sinew,
any of that stuff.
that all has fat in it.
Marrow.
Marrow is one of the highest fat contents there is in an animal.
Yep.
May sound gross, but if it's between that or dying because you can't just live on a straight meat diet.
I bought marrow at a restaurant recently.
Well, they have soup.
Yeah. There was a bone.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And
I see. I've heard of places where you can go and buy marrow soup.
right.
But
Yeah, never actually just the marrow.
Yeah, Blaze of all places. Of course. Gourmet junk food.
Gourmet junk food. Yeah. I haven't been there, but I've heard good things. So.
Oh, stay away. It corrupts you.
So, something else I noticed you doing, and I've seen you.
Have them up online and stuff, is you make like little survival packs
Yeah.
and stuff.
Yep. So it all started with, I went up to Jackman, what was it, last summer? I don't know. Time becomes weird when you work nights. I think
I worked night shift for 6 years, so yes,
I know all
yeah,
about that.
time becomes relative.
days blend together. You forget what day it is sometimes. Oh,
Years. But yeah, so I was on it was actually a canoe trip in Jackman, and before we even set out, this is embarrassing, but I had a little bit of a hissy fit and stomped my fishing rod holder because it wasn't working. And it actually came up and got me in the heel, laid me open, and I had kind of a minimal first aid kit with me. For a nurse, that's kind of a embarrassing thing. But I did keep it together, and the whole trip I had it wrapped up for like 3 days, and it was kind of miserable because it was sore to walk on. But anyways, after that I realized, like, shit, I need something really small, watertight, that I'm always going to have no matter where I'm at.
Right.
Like, because I can just slip it in a coat pocket. So I make these vacuum sealed first aid kits. And then I went a step farther, and now I'm making little survival kits that are under the same, like, no gimmicks, no nothing.
Yeah.
Just what
So you put in like a ferro rod and stuff in there.
Yep, fire starting, because the triad of survival.
So
if you
explain to
didn't know,
people real quick what a ferro rod is, because
Oh,
I'm
they
sure
might-
a lot of people
might be
have no-
scratching their heads.
It might be, what the hell is he talking about? What the hell's a ferro rod? So,
I always struggle with this word, but feral?
I always call it, I don't even know if I'm saying it right, I always call it like pharaoh, like
You got it.
like a pharaoh.
Yeah.
Like an Egyptian pharaoh.
Because it's made from ferrocerium, I believe is, if I'm pronouncing that right, and it's I forget chemically what it is. It's a mixture of steel.
That's the ignition.
and-
That's the ignition compound.
That is the ignition compound, and then you need a hard piece of steel. The harder, the better, with a good edge on it. You can use your knife blade or whatever, and then you run it across it, and you get very, very hot sparks.
And you want to be gentle with that too, correct?
Correct. You don't want to beat the piss out of it,
Because I've seen
No.
guys try to do it before,
and it looks like they're like trying to start a fight with it, and they end up breaking the rod. And
Yeah, I broke one in half because I dropped it on my my floor, my cement floor, and
Which that's not going to do you a damn bit of good if you're out in the woods and you break it. So.
No, most of them. This one broke because it was a big mother. It was like massive. But yes, what's cool about it is it will work even when it's wet. It doesn't require a fuel source other than itself.
Right.
And it's very, very hot sparks. Nothing beats a Bic, but you got to keep a Bic dry.
You know, anytime I'm out in the woods, and even when I'm not,
Just out of habit, I always carry a lighter.
Yes.
Always carry a lighter with me, especially when I'm outdoors.
just because you never know when you're going to, something happens. People say all the time, how many times do you hear about somebody going I'm just going on this little journey in here, then something happens, they're stuck out overnight
With no way to make a fire, and they're cold and freezing their ass off, or something.
may not be to them, but
Something happens to somebody else, or
Injuries.
things come up. Especially when you're going way out in the woods like in Maine. I don't know how it is in a lot of other states, but when I can travel literally 20 miles from my house and not have anybody around me for 10 or 15 miles.
Yeah.
So if my vehicle breaks down, even on a main road, sometimes you may not see anybody
for hours and hours and hours and hours.
hours on end. And let's face it, cell reception ain't exactly. You see this is a great horror movie trope that you throw into, so the kids can't call when there's shit happening. But up here, it happens all the time. You go in spots, there's no cell reception.
In your little cell map or whatever that you look at, there's coverage here. I'll be fine.
No, it's not. You might find a spot with a half a bar that you could try to call out, but it's not happening.
No.
And
if you're stuck in your car overnight and it's dead of winter,
I would rather try to
Go outside and start a fire and stay warm.
honestly, yeah.
You're better off. I mean, yes, the vehicle's going to provide you shelter. If you can start the fire and lean against your vehicle so you've got something blocking the wind or whatever, hey, but that may not be an option, But
Right.
go find a stand of fir, get yourself not under a
Pine tree that's loaded with snow.
Right.
You want to get, if you can get in a little stand of fir or something, though, and make yourself,
Fir is one of the best trees. Fir and birch are your two survival
And
road
fir
trees.
and birch will burn no matter how wet
yeah.
those things, especially birch.
Birch bark, because there's resin in it, so
Yep.
it will burn no matter what.
That's my go-to. There's been so many fires.
But fir boughs work damn good in a pinch, too.
Yep, they do.
So,
And they smell good.
yes, it's very, very good.
Yeah.
So while you're trying not to freeze to death, it smells nice. There you go.
You've got to incorporate the mental factor into survival.
It's a mental comfort,
Right?
Yeah, sometimes the little things,
Just rub it under your pits. Be like, yeah.
You smell like one of those pine.
You smell like one of those air fresheners
You
you
get
get in the car.
So,
The bears will like it.
and something else, and I may be not remembering this correctly, but so there's
There's a gum that's on the trees too. Fir trees, I believe. Is it fir? Pine.
A lot of them have a resin. The most common, that you can chew. Is that what you?
yeah, the stuff you can
The
do-
spruce gum.
Spruce gum. Like I guess it tastes absolutely horrible,
Yeah.
but it's got some nutrients in it.
Yeah.
So you can chew on it in a survival situation. Give yourself a little boost if you need something.
It's a mental thing.
And it would be a mental thing because I got something. No, that's
And
good.
it keeps the saliva going if you're running low on water.
Ah.
And I loved that. When I was in the desert back in 2001, we got lost in high school, and I was really thankful I had hard candies and stuff, because I ran low on water because I didn't expect to be out overnight.
Right.
And I was really glad that I had just something, because it's so it's the freaking desert. I'm dried out, and just something to keep saliva going, and you feel a lot better when your mouth's not just all sticking together.
So I hope everybody out there is learning a little bit of something different. This is something a little different from my
Right.
usual shows, but this is kind of, I think, pertinent information for people. So
Yeah, totally.
And
so what you were saying something about before I
cut you off and got sidetracked, which happens.
That's what we
was
do.
about what was the trifecta of stuff you were talking
Oh,
about?
yeah. You first of all, in my book, this kind of varies on who's teaching you, but water, fire, shelter. People get really hung up on having food, and food is great, and you do need it, and it's it's comforting. I like my food. But
yeah, me
yeah.
too.
Yeah.
If anybody has ever met me, they know I like food. So
yeah, but you can go 2 weeks. I think 2 weeks without eating.
You can only go 72 hours without water?
Yeah, 3 days, and that's in good conditions. I've heard of people stretching it, but that you're doing a lot of damage to your organs.
your organs
Start shutting down after 48. Is it correct with no water?
Yeah, you start really feeling the effects of dehydration. I mean, I feel it after a day. Being a nurse, like, we're notorious for not drinking enough water. And
even in my day
job when I'm working and there's days and it's hotter than hell and you're sweating your ass off and you don't get a chance to drink a lot of water, I feel it at the end of the day. You can tell when you're not consuming enough.
So I can imagine you make that like tenfold worse when you're out in an element and you can't get any water, and you don't want to just drink water from any random stream. Or I wouldn't worry too much where we live for the most part.
It's pretty good. Like, stay away from like your swamps or your beaver ponds and.
You don't want to get the Giardia.
No, the trots are not your friend.
Giardia is
knock
bad.
on wood. I've escaped it so far, and I've drank from some, but I always filter, and I'm pretty diligent with my filtering of water. But you're right. A lot of places in Maine, the water's clear, the water's good.
As a kid, I didn't think
Anything is sticking my face in the stream and drinking water.
It's so
like
good.
in the backyard, even in my backyard,
that warms my heart.
I just be like,
feeling.
I'm thirsty. I'm gonna stick my. Oh, it's nice and cool, and I'm not thinking anything about what might have gone to the bathroom in the stream or whatever. Hey, it's flowing and it's cool, so it's.
As you see a turd floating by, you're like,
whatever. I didn't die, so
if it doesn't kill you, it's better.
Maybe it made my immune system stronger for when I got older. But
yeah, that's what we do here in Maine. We eat, and drink whatever we want, wherever we want.
We're hardy souls, apparently. Apparently, if anybody has ever been to Maine and you've had Moxie, that right there should pretty much sum up.
I love Moxie.
See, there you go. There's a I can't stomach it, but
it will decrease your engine or quench your thirst.
Quench your thirst, right? It's So that's Moxie in a nutshell. Basically, you can use it to get a rusted bolt unstuck, or it serves dual purposes. Maybe that's why Maine folks like it. But so if you can track down Moxie and you're listening to this and you're not from Maine, which is probably a large chunk of you, try to track down Moxie. And I'm not talking the Moxie energy drinks. I'm talking Moxie. It's in an orange can with a dark blue lettering, I believe.
Yep.
Yeah. So you try that. And then you tell us what you think. Tell me what you think. If you find Moxie and you drink it, comment on the Average Joe's Drive-In page, which you can find at real quick on Facebook.com/Average Joe's Drive-In podcast. Let me know what you think of Moxie.
Yeah, I want to know.
Or comment on this podcast on the actual podcast description,
depending on where you are downloading it from or checking it out on. Because I don't see all of the places, so...
Yeah, that must be frustrating to even find out who's watched or
like I see my stats and the hits and what I'm getting and what downloads, but I don't know what sites they actually come from.
Yeah.
Like when I check my overall stats, it tells me the country, because I have listeners. Apparently, I have listeners all over the world: Russia, Denmark, Japan, Austria.
Oh, that's awesome.
It comes up in the United States, Canada. So, all those places, and there's been a few others on there, but I don't actually see the sites they come off from, so I don't know, because there are so many podcast apps and stuff out there where this goes up on. So, it's, which is why I know everybody's like, oh, I don't want to add a Facebook page. I listen to your show. I haven't, say hi, go on the pages. I'm also on Instagram, Thomas Washburn Jr., Twitter. I'm never on Twitter, so that's probably the least best place, even though that's not grammatically correct. That's not the best place to reach me. Either Instagram or Facebook or or like I said, if you go on Podbean,
you can actually comment on that stuff. But I mean, you have iTunes and you have all the different apps.
Use
YouTube.
Podcast Addict.
That's what I use.
This podcast. That's my favorite.
It's very easily
organized, and I have all my shows. So I've
got about 20 on there now. I'm slowly.
They don't call it Podcast Addict for no reason, because as I've gotten into more, before I even got into podcasting, I had 4 or 5 shows I listened to. Now I've got like 20, because I keep finding more cool shows to check out.
So it is addicting.
I find now I listen to less music when I'm driving, because I have a 40-45 minute commute each way every day. So I find usually I spend my time listening to podcasts now.
I do a lot of audiobooks and podcasts when driving. Yeah, I'm with you on that
So
one.
I'd rather, it's just, I love my music, but I have that usually
Always have music on when I'm home. So in the
car, it almost feels like there's somebody riding with me, because you're listening to something and the time just zips by when I'm listening to a podcast.
And all the educational stuff now on podcasts, it's a good thing. It's you could really learn.
Dan Harlan's Hardcore History is a great one. Even the Joe Rogan Experience, I learned so much from that show, because he has so many interesting guests on there.
He does.
Even if he doesn't agree with people, he has them on there and he talks to them. And I don't care what anybody says about Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan is a very well-spoken, smart man. He
is. He's a dink.
He could be he could be a dink. Yeah,
but he's a good one. He's he has a purpose. I don't think any of his stuff is out there to really slander anybody or to cause waves.
And that was really the first podcast I got into, was the Joe Rogan Experience. And a few of my different friends have various types of podcasts, so I got listening to those, and then then I was like, you know what? And I have had some online radio shows and stuff over the years in different capacities, and so I was like, I've kind of already done the podcasting, because I used to have guests on them and stuff. But I was like, it really wasn't podcasting when I did it, because this was way back in the infancy of this stuff. So I was like, for those of you who haven't listened to earlier episodes or have heard this before, I'm going to tell you again. But this was, I thought this was kind of a cool way to talk about like stuff that I'm into and keep up with all my friends. And I was talking to Shaw about that a little bit before, about this. Part of my excuse for doing a podcast was simply to keep up with all my friends that I don't get to see, because so many of my friends are spread out, and I've met so many people over the years being in bands and being a writer and just involved in all the different things that I'm involved in, because I just have got my fingers in, whether that probably sounds really bad. I've got my fingers in a lot of things, but so I've got irons in a lot of different fires is probably a better way to say that.
Yeah.
A more articulate way to say that one.
Think about the kids, TJ.
Do it for the kids.
Do it for the kids.
But so that was my way of being able to just kind of keep in contact. But at the same time, I knew I've got all these different friends that are doing so many cool things. I was like, well, that's cool. Maybe I can kind of spotlight and showcase them. We get to catch up and hang out and talk, and we get to talk about nerdy things like movies, which you and I were talking about that. So Shaw started listening to the show, and he said I inspired him. I feel great. I inspired somebody to get back into like watching some movies and keeping up on stuff, and my nerdism's rubbed off on somebody. So.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, like I remember the days when, pre-Netflix, any of the streaming stuff, you had to go out and buy cheapo DVDs if you wanted to chill at the house. Or even back in the day when we had VHS.
And you had to go rent them.
Oh, you had to rent them and the VCR.
Oh, yeah. I'm old enough that I remember that. So.
And damn, nothing better happened to that VCR. Well, you got it, or else you are paying out the nose. But, yeah, so I went back to Walmart. I think you suggested Walmart for, like, the old... I think it was, like, the Friday 13th collection or something. You're like, oh, it was on sale. So I went, and sure enough.
Yeah, they had a good deal on some of the, like, the horror series. Like, they had them. Either you could... it would be like 2 DVDs or 2 Blu-rays or whatever, and it would have like 1 through 4 and 4 through 8 or whatever, the whole thing's on there. And I mean, most of them were under $20.
Yeah, this was.
So
like
if
20.
you don't already own them, you can't go wrong with that.
There's no excuse not to. Like, if you enjoy those movies, they're something good to have on hand. Even if you're not really actively watching them, having them on in the background, as messed up as that sounds.
Oh, there's movies that I have watched so many times I don't really need to pay attention to them. Like, there's movies I will throw on and half pay attention to while doing other things, and I still don't feel like I miss anything because I've seen them so much that when I look up, I know exactly what's going on.
Yeah.
And I think everybody's got those movies. You know, I can do that with Jaws. I can do that with Red Dawn. I can do that with pretty much any of the Romero movies. You know, there's a pile of movies. Return of the Living Dead. You know, there's The Howling.
Cheech and Chong movies. That's mine. I don't know. Like you.
Star Wars is another one that I can throw on at any point and just be like, all right, I know what's going on. I'm doing other things. Oh, yeah, I'm watching 10 minutes, doing something else. Watching 10 minutes, doing something else. You know, but
Fight Club. That's another one.
Yeah, I have that, but it's been a long time since I've watched it.
Excellent book too.
Yeah.
I've never got into Chuck's writing. Like, I've tried to read his stuff a couple times, and it's not really nothing wrong with it. The guy's an amazing writer, but it's for me, it's really hard to digest a lot of what he writes.
It's introspective writing.
Yeah.
Like, I love the character development with this guy who has like this insomnia, but then he ends up having like a dual personality, that one of them's an anarchist, and you know, that's what we need more of in society.
Maybe not. I don't know.
I shouldn't say this. Government's gonna come into your place and start beating down the door in a minute.
I expect that anytime because, you know, it's one of those things you can't really say anything without pissing somebody off these days, but that's just how things are. But
it is.
So I'm, you know, because I've been a movie collecting nerd for as long as I can remember. Even when I was in high school, I used to go buy used VHS tapes at the video store when they would have, like, they would be getting rid of, like, their popular stuff or whatever. And you used to be able to pick stuff up for, like, $10 for a used VHS.
Jesus.
Copy of whatever.
Yeah.
But I would pick out, like, movies that I really liked. I would pick them up. And, or they'd be getting rid of some of their older movies to make room for the new ones type deal. So I had a pretty significant collection of movies, even when I was in high school. And, you know, over the years, and then I transitioned to the DVD and Blu-ray, and I still buy all 3 formats. So I just recently, like I've talked about on the show, like I kind of got back into collecting some VHS stuff because there's places around where I live that I can pick up VHS really cheap.
The mom and pop stores that are going down.
So
they're selling their rental stock.
Oh yeah, and you get a lot of those. But the thing is with the VHS is, like, there's a lot of movies I like, but I don't necessarily need to have them on Blu-ray or DVD because they're not those type of movies. I can watch a VHS copy and it still looks good enough for me, you know, because that's what I grew up on. I'm used to it. Then there's other movies, especially newer ones and stuff, I wouldn't want them on VHS because they would look awful. But,
right.
Or there's older movies that are just too grandiose to, like, you know, they need... So, or there's, you know, so I keep finding stuff and they're cheap enough that I can pick up like 10 or 15, 20 movies for like $5. So it's not a big deal to go, you know, and buy them and have them even if I only watch them once. I'm not out anything. They're roughly 25 to 30 cents a piece, you know?
Yeah, and I think they're just cool collector's items these days to know you have it on VHS.
Someday I'll break them out and show a kid and be like, this back in the day is what we had to, ooh, you know, you'll have the
what's tape?
What's a tape? What's a DVD? I use my virtual headset plug-in that goes directly into my brain. I don't know what a TV is. You're confusing me, Grandpa. You know?
Although I will say cassette music tapes, I'm kind of glad they're not a thing. I might be pissing off a ton of people right now, but I always would have to struggle.
They've
with
made a
finding
comeback.
those.
You see bands releasing
I
stuff
know,
on tape now.
I know.
but
As a musician, they're probably awesome. They're convenient.
It's a nostalgia thing, I think, like
Yeah.
anything, and it's kind of like that with the VHS stuff that I pick up. Some of it's a nostalgia thing.
Yeah.
Part of it's that, but
I was just hard on them.
at the same time, they're cheap. It's a cheap way for me to pick up stuff I haven't seen or stuff. Like I said, I don't necessarily need to drop $4 or $5 on.
For sure.
So that's kind of the way I've just been approaching that. Pick a bunch up whenever I get a chance. Whenever I go to the specific store that I go to, I'll look and, whatever they've got that I want to grab that looks interesting or whatever, I'll pick up. A lot of it's like 80s comedies and stuff that I
really?
love, like old John Candy movies and stuff like that.
He was.
I love John Candy.
He
John
was
Candy was one
something
of my
else.
favorites. So.
He was just an awesome comedian and a good guy.
And, like I picked up The Great Outdoors and Uncle Buck and, Who's Harry Crumb and stuff like that.
The raccoons in the Great Outdoors.
Oh, best thing ever. Best thing.
I love
that and the old 95er.
Yeah.
He ate the whole thing. He didn't eat the whole thing. What? Well, there's still gristle to do. Come on, you can do it. We all eat for free. If you.
He's looking at it like.
Oh, that whole scene, and the scene with them in the boat and the leeches kills me every time. Them all waking up, they're all covered in the leeches. And
It's like Land of the Lost when he has the giant tick on his back. He's all white and he's like, oh, I'm so tired.
I can't figure out what's going on.
He falls down, big blood balloon pops everywhere. Yeah, no, I'm a big fan of the dumb comedies. Like, I'm not. I do this like somewhat intellectual job. I consider it because it always gets your mind working. When I'm off, I don't want to think about shit. I just want to laugh and just take things literally.
Yeah, I've talked to a few people about this, and then it's like I like movies. I like fun movies. I mean, I do like serious movies and stuff too.
Occasionally.
But 9 times out of 10, I want something I'm gonna have fun with. It doesn't have to be. It's like I was talking with my friend Zach on the show about like I'm not into like horror I love horror movies, but I'm not necessarily into like what I call mean horror movies, like the Hostel movies and shit like that.
Yeah.
Like
brutal.
Cannibal Holocaust, shit like that. It's I don't know, there's something about those movies that just does not appeal to me. I like stupid, fun monster movies. I like slasher movies.
Yeah.
The premises are goofy. They're dumb. That's the type of horror movies I like. Granted, I do like some stuff, I can't say I don't like gross movies because I love Italian horror. That's some of the sickest shit you're ever going to watch. Giallos.
Yes. You're watching one without knowing you're watching one.
Italian movies have this weird color palette to them, and they have a weird way of storytelling.
And the actresses.
It's just gorgeous Italian actresses, and but the scores are always really cool and just over the top and just grand, and especially like Old Fushi and Dario Argento and Mario Bava and Michael Silvi and stuff like that. I've got a Cemetery Man poster on my wall. That's like one of my favorite Italian films.
I'm impressed.
That is one of the most bizarre, weird movies.
Yeah.
But it's so wonderful and the best. It's weird and just out there. It makes no sense in the best of ways. So
Shudder. Have you watched any of that? It's like a streaming service, Shudder.
It's like the Netflix horror version of Netflix.
That's really like widened my horror palette. Just like that's the only reason I know about the Italian directors and that stuff's because
Amazon
they
Prime has a lot of that stuff on there, and I have Prime for dual. Like I have it for 2 reasons. One, because I get free shipping and deals on stuff, but 2, I get the streaming service, and they have a ton of really good old kind of obscure movies. Ton of Fulci movies I haven't seen, because he, most people know when they talk about Fulci, they know like The Beyond, Gates of Hell, and Zombie. A lot of people, or House by the Cemetery is another one. They don't know things beyond that, like New York Ripper or Never Torture a Duckling or one of the countless other movies
he put out.
and it's the same way with Argento.
A lot of people don't like Suspiria and Phenomena and a few other movies, Opera.
They don't know a lot of these
Other films that he puts out. And Mario Bava, who put
out a lot of horror.
He also did a lot of non-horror too, but
Like I don't know if it's his sons or
his nephews or brothers, but there's other Bavas that direct, like Umberto,
and they put out some pretty gory, just trashy, nasty stuff,
Which is funny when you think about Italy, you think about culture and art and all these fine things, and then you've got some of the most gory, brutal horror movies out there.
And a lot of those movies for the longest time were banned in the U.S. because they are so gory and over the top. It's like, but there's something about an Italian film that the gore is almost it's artistic
in a lot of ways.
It's gory and it's gross and
It makes you kind of want to gag, but at the same time,
it's got a beauty to it. It's weird to say that, but that's
the cinematography was
right.
good.
And that falls a lot onto, like I was
talking about, the color palette that the Italians use.
The Italians have a very, especially
The older Italian films
have a very unique
color palette to them.
It's a lot different than what you'd see. It's very primary
color in a lot of ways, and it's not real flashy. It's dark and it's just gritty and it's
very scarlet blood.
As one of my friends said,
watching an Italian film is like
viewing a nightmare.
Oh.
And I was like, that's a perfect description because that's what it is. It doesn't make any sense. It's very vivid. It's chaotic.
I loved it. And they're weird because a lot of them are legit films.
Very, very much.
Because horror, I'm sure you're probably the same way from watching your podcast. Horror has to be graded on its own.
Oh yeah, I will grade a horror movie completely different than I would grade a mainstream film.
Absolutely.
A horror movie that I give a 6 or a 7 to, if that was a mainstream film, a lot of times that would be on my enjoyment level would be like
maybe a 3 or a 4.
Yeah.
It's because
it's no Citizen Kane.
No. And it's like another thing you talk to people about sometimes too, because that gets brought up about grading. Always like, well, how the hell do you give that movie a 7, but you give this movie a 5? That's a way better. That movie's just weird. I said, but you can't judge that. They're two different genres.
Yes.
I will judge a bad horror movie at a higher level than I would a mediocre action film.
Right.
So
you can look at the genre. One guy that I think he's made the segue between fine film and horror, Alfred Hitchcock.
Oh, Hitchcock was he was the master. He's like the original master of horror. Even though a lot of his films aren't horror, they're suspense.
No, that's it.
Suspense thrills. And then you get into the whole thing with a lot of people you talk about. So a lot of people don't consider suspense and thrillers part of the horror genre.
Yeah.
Which I absolutely 100% understand, but this is where you get into people will be like, well, would you consider Silence of the Lambs a horror movie?
Exactly.
If you go by traditional horror movie standards,
it's not.
Not really. It has horror movie elements,
but it's a thriller. It's not a horror movie. I would consider it a thriller.
It's like a psychological
thriller, exactly. But I consider that a subgenre of horror.
I do too.
So if you'll see like people, I recently did a top 100 list, and there were some films on there I included that a lot of people would not consider horror movies. I do.
Right.
So the thing with horror is, it always has been to me at least, is horror is very subjective to the viewer. One thing, there's horror movies that I watch that scare the shit out of some people that I think are funny, or they're whatever, or they're whatever, that didn't scare me. There's stuff that other people watch that don't bother them. It scares the absolute shit out. It's all the thing with horror, maybe more so than any other genre of film, is there's something appeals to each person in a different way. We could watch the same films, and there could be something in that film that absolutely bothers the shit out of me that you don't think anything of. And then there's something that bothers you that I don't think anything of. And that's the beauty about horror movies. There's something for that gets to that primal level of fear in everybody.
Yeah, it's about how
everybody
you feel.
Everybody has it creates a different feeling in everybody.
Like,
depending
it
on the
does
films.
nothing to me. It doesn't really scare me.
But I
don't have a problem with clowns.
I love it. It's a great movie. The remake was excellent, and I like the original miniseries. The book is absolutely terrifying, but
I probably would feel differently.
The book is absolutely terrifying because it's like so many of Stephen King's things. It's it translates, but the book is just on a whole other
Salem's
level.
Lot.
Salem's Lot's another one.
That book actually legit scared me.
It bothered me. Pet Cemetery was another one that really bothered me. That there's parts of that really the dark half. There's a lot of stuff in that's friggin' creepy as shit. The visuals, and that's the beauty of like a lot of books, and King books in particular. He sets up and paints scenes so vividly, which is why I think, and I've talked about it before with people, about which I think is part of the reason King books are so hard to make into movies, because he paints such a visual picture in people's minds with the way he writes that people have a preconceived notion of what things should look like and before they ever see the film.
Right.
You don't always get that with a lot of writers. I'm a prime example of it. You could read one of my books, and I don't think it has that same visual painting, that you would get from reading a Stephen King book.
Yeah, but he's got his own style, though. He can be descriptive and not boring.
Right.
It's hard to pull off.
Oh, that's very hard to pull off. I always say there's like two different types of writers when it comes to writers. You have the people like the Clive Barkers and the Stephen Kings of the world. Chuck Palahniuk, guys that can write super descriptive stuff and not bore the shit out of you, because they know how to walk that tightrope between narrative and description, and dialogue, and that's the other thing. Then there's other writers, and there's nothing wrong with it. Your people like your Dean Koontz and your Dan Browns and your William Pattersons.
And what's his Tom Clancy?
Tom Clancy that write great stories, but they don't have that visual aesthetic to them that say like a King or a Barker has.
Right.
So, and there's nothing wrong with that. Or even if you want to go to a whole different genre, like like a Zane Grey novel for a Western, or anything like that.
I'm reading the Monster Hunter International series. I really recommend it if you haven't.
Who is that by?
Larry Corriera.
Larry Corriera.
I
will have to put that on the list of stuff.
You will.
I am so backlogged on books because
I bet.
I have a. I was talking with a friend of mine the other night about this. I don't read a lot in the summertime and the spring because I'm usually busy doing stuff and going out and about.
We have daylight.
We have daylight for more than 8 hours a day.
Yeah.
So, and during the summertime, I just don't read a lot. I do read, but not anywhere near like I do in the winter.
Right.
Come about end of November, I start getting back into reading. I'll start polishing off a lot of times a book a week, easy.
Shit.
When I really get into stuff that I like, a couple days I can polish a book off. I also speed read, which
I can't do it.
Not like I used to. I've slowed down because I don't read with like the veracity that I used to read. When I was in high school, I'd read 2 or 3 books a week a lot of times, no problem. And not in a long amount of time, and retain what I read.
Read The Stand in a week.
I read The Stand in 10 hours.
You're shitting me.
The unabridged version, which is like 1,300 pages, I think. Yeah.
That took me on Audible the better part of like a couple months.
I read it in 8 hours.
That's a record.
I don't think I could do that now.
Right.
That would probably take me 2 weeks to read now because, one, I don't have the time to sit there for 8 hours straight and read. And two,
Right.
you know, but I can polish 250-page book off in 7 or 8 hours if I have the time to actually sit and read for 7 or 8 hours, which does not happen very often.
Oh, nursing school would have been a lot easier if I had that ability.
These days, when I read, it's generally like in the wintertime, especially, like I try to read like
Half hour, 40 minutes before I go to bed, I'll sit and read a couple chapters or something.
But a lot of times in the winter, the weather's shitty. I don't want to go outside and do anything.
Yeah.
It's like I don't feel like watching a movie. I don't want to. So I'll sit on the couch and read a book, or you know,
My
I do
ADD
that.
acts up too bad.
Well, that too. I have a very short attention
Me
span.
too.
So even when I'm watching movies, a lot of times at home, I have to pause and get up at least a couple of times during a film, especially if it's longer than like an hour and 20 minutes or so. Shorter movies are better for me because I can get them in one chunk. Unless it's really engaging and something that really sucks me right in, I usually have to get up and move around and do
You know,
something.
Gods and Generals for you. That movie's like 4 hours long, I think.
wow, no, I don't think I could.
Great Civil War
Even
movie,
though
but-
I have watched the Stand miniseries,
Probably 10 times, and that's like 6.5, 7 hours.
And you liked it?
I do. But I also...
Mixed reviews from me on that
It
one.
was one of those things like back in the day when I was in high school,
Yeah.
I had just finished reading The Stand. I never
Yeah.
read The Stand, I think, until I was like a freshman or sophomore in high school, so it was still fairly fresh in my head when that came out on TV when I was in high school.
Yep.
So I watched the whole miniseries. Like, that was an event, man. That was back in the day when miniseries weren't an event, you know. The whole
Oh,
family
yeah.
got together and watched them, and you taped them, and, you know, that was the thing, and you watched them. You know, that was way before DVR, when you had the VCR tape that you had recycled for 450 movies because...
I forgot about that.
You know, recordable VHS tapes were ungodly expensive for a long time.
Yeah.
And, you know, so we do that stuff. So I just recently picked it up on Blu-ray. I got a 3-pack with the Langoliers, the Golden Years, and the Stand on Blu-ray, or DVD, sorry. Yeah. Picked them up for like $12 for
Yep.
all three. So
Did they ever do the Tommy Knockers?
I have that, yes. I have that
They
on
did
DVD.
that
It's not very good.
No.
It's okay, but I mean, it's not great. That's one of my least favorite King books.
It was pretty meh.
There's a lot of potential in there, but that was, I think, at the heyday of King's heavy coke usage. So, if I remember correctly, he said in interviews he doesn't even remember writing the book.
No doubt. I love his honesty.
You know, he's like, I think that was pretty much at the heyday of
His heavy drinking and drug use, and
so it's not a terrible book by any means, but it goes
all over the place, and
it's hard to follow, and
Oh yeah.
it's very meandering and just winding, and in the miniseries it was much the same way. I own it. I picked it up for like $3, I think, at Bull Moose, so I was like, I gotta snag
Oh,
it
Bull Moose.
to have for the collection, you know. So
Hey, Bull Moose, sponsor this podcast if you're listening.
that's what I've been saying for many episodes. I was like, I'll plug the place regardless of whether they sponsor me or not, because I just absolutely love that store for entertainment purposes. You know, that's where I buy pretty much all my music, all my movies, most of my books. You know, that's my go-to place for everything. So, you know, sending love to Bull Moose Way. And if you're not from Maine or New Hampshire, or I can't remember if they have a store in Vermont or not, but I'm going to let you in on a little secret. There's a site, www.bullmoosemusic.com, and you can buy stuff on there. And I'll tell you right now,
Deals are good.
the deals are just as good, if not better, than you'll find on Amazon and a lot of places like that. And I probably shouldn't tell you that, because that means I'm not going to get stuff
I
as
know,
cheap.
you're screwing yourself.
Because, you know, a lot of the stuff's like used or whatever, but, you know, I'm trying to help people out here. And they always have awesome sales on
Vinyl.
things, and they have vinyl, and they
If you're a
have,
vinyl junkie, that's the place to go.
and you know, so it's just a great store, and I love most of the staff in there is really awesome and good dudes, and a lot of musician friends of mine work
Yep.
there, so
Yep.
I can, pretty much guarantee when I go into the Bangor
Bull Moose location that I'm going to see my friend Ryan or Justin working in there,
So it's always good to see those guys. And they're always very helpful and always, lead you right to whatever you're looking for. And as they always say, usually if they don't have it, they may not have it at that store, but they may have it at one of the other, dozen Bull Moose locations.
Yeah, that Waterville one is something else.
What I've talked about, and I want to do this sometime, is I want to go on a Bull Moose excursion. Just take a day, get up early, and try to hit
every Bull Moose in the state.
Damn.
Which would be fun, because you would have to pretty much
Go from one end of the state to the other.
Yeah.
But it would be fun.
Oh, it'd be awesome.
It would be a blast, this big long road trip day, and go and be like, all right, I'm only going to spend like 40 minutes at each store, just look around and, whatever, and go and...
Maybe compile interviews, like a quick, 15-minute interview, and make a podcast.
My Bull Moose Adventure Road Trip 3-part series,
Oh, that could be like a video. That could be there could be some potential there.
What I need to do is get Ryan or Justin to go with me, one of the guys that works at the Bull Moose, and just be like, I'm going to bring you along, so we have, you can be the narrator of the Bull Moose story here. I think it would be a blast just to go. I've been to a handful of them. I've been to the one in Waterville, and I've been to the one in Portland, and the one in Bangor, but I think there's, I want to say there's 10 or 12 of them. There's quite a few, so it would be interesting just to go to see because all Bull Mooses are not set up the same way.
They're a little different.
They all have their own little, their
humor.
They have their own little
flair, I guess, to them, and
which is one of the things I love about Bull Moose is that they have personality. They kind of harken back to the old mom and pop record stores, because essentially at heart that's what Bull Moose is. It's a mom and pop record store for all media. So
they're not afraid. Some things are not PC. When you walk in, you'll see something on the wall or something written on a description of a certain music genre, and you're like, I'm really surprised they did that. Hell yeah! But I'm all about that.
And it's just
like I said, I absolutely love the store, and I frequent it almost every time I make a trip to Bangor.
This is how often I go with one of my buddies. Even I'll go in and not even buy anything and just walk around the store just because I love the store so much. But I was driving by the other day. A bunch of us went out to see Thor, and we went out go have dinner. And I haven't had a chance just to go out for a night out for a while, so it was really fun. But I drove by Bull Moose, and my best friend was like, I'm very proud of you. You drove by Bull Moose and you didn't stop and go in. And I almost was like, well, I really want to say, well, if we had more time, I probably would have at least stopped in and let me run in for a minute anyway, just to say I made my weekly visit,
That's when you go, oh yeah, pull you in. Be like,
But, so, yeah, that's... Shaw will vouch that it is an awesome store.
Yes.
But, yeah. So make sure you go check out bullmoose.com. But hey, man, we are running just about to the end time of the show, and as always, it goes by way too quick, and it doesn't take any time to kill an hour. So, but real quick before we wrap things up, I want to thank my sponsor, the Maine Cannababes. Their episode of Weed Etiquette is debuting tonight on Vice at 9 p.m., today is Tuesday. I think. Yes, today is Tuesday, November...
What the hell's the date today?
14th.
November 14th. So, if you're hearing this and it's not November 14th and you have Vice, I'm sure it will be on demand, or you can check that out. But go to the Maine Cannababes site, www.mainecannababes.com. All their proceeds from the sales of their calendar and... stuff like that goes towards some awesome causes, so I highly recommend you go do that. And they have lots of cool stuff up there, and you get to look at photos of really beautiful women, and what's wrong with that? So there you go. Check out maincannababes.com. Sorry. I'd like to thank Shaw for coming in and hanging out with me and catching up. It's been like a year and a half, I think, since we got to hang out last.
Star Wars.
Last time, actually, we hung out was
The Force Awakens, I think. So
it's been almost 2 years.
Yeah.
So it's been a while. So, and we don't even live that far apart, but just scheduling and all this stuff. And I don't go out to shows like I used to. You know, we're getting old.
It's just one of those things,
It
man.
is.
That's
I can't hang.
It
Like I used
guitars,
to.
I cannot hang. It's like 8:30, 9 o'clock most nights. I'm like, I'm usually going to bed right now. This is just not. I don't like driving at night anymore.
Yeah,
You know.
I went straight edge like 6 years ago, so
I don't really drink and stuff, but it's
Yeah.
just I don't go.
you know, I just can't handle doing.
It's just not. If I'm getting old and curmudgeon-y.
In my old age, and damn kids, and get off
Music's
my
loud,
lawn.
my feet hurt.
Your music's loud. Back in my day, the music was better. You know,
Oh, yeah.
I'm turning into one of those guys. You know, I just don't get you young people in
Your music and your anger.
But your anger. I don't remember being angry like that. I was like, yeah, bullshit, man. You were very angry, but
We just internalize our anger now.
that's right. We internalize it because we have to because we're adults. Damn it.
Right.
So we get in trouble for pushing that outwards. But yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, thanks everybody for listening. And again, if you enjoy the show, please rate it on whatever app you listen to. A little like is awesome. Leave comments. Let me know what you think. www.thomaswashburnjr.com. Find me on Facebook. Average Joe's Drive-In. Twitter, TWJ Author. On Instagram, thomaswashburnjr.com. So yeah, hit all those up. Any of the sites, like I said, you can find the show on iTunes, YouTube, and hundreds of podcast apps. Rate them, help make the show more visible. Tell your friends, tell your neighbors, tell your enemies. You have been listening to Average Joe's Drive-In. I am your host, TJ Washburn, and I will see you sexy animals on the flip side.